Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I'm really excited to talk about nutrition for women with you. I know that this is a passion area of yours. And so let's dive right in and have you start off by sharing a little bit with my listeners about how you got excited and interested in the topic of nutrition.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's an honor to be on your podcast. I got interested in nutrition in kind of an interesting way back in high school. My dad had always talked about wanting to do Weight Watchers, had these weight loss goals that he couldn't necessarily motivate himself to do.
Yeah.
I sort of challenged him and said, "Hey, if I do Weight Watchers with you, like, will you do it?" And he took me up on that. And he succeeded and lost 45 pounds on
Awesome.
this program.
Yeah.
We went to weekly meetings together, counted points together. We shared recipes, cooked together. It was like a whole new chapter of our relationship.
Yeah.
And overall, it just developed my interest in nutrition and fueling your body.
Hmm.
It helped me like see, wow, food can impact someone so positively. I watched my dad achieve his goals and become such a healthier version of himself that it inspired me to want to study it in school. So then I ended up going to school for it, moved out to Oregon to complete my dietetic internship, which is a requirement to become a dietitian. At
Yeah.
the end of that internship, you take an exam and then you become a registered dietitian. And that was 10 years ago. And here we are today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. As a fellow Weight Watchers person, I can certainly appreciate that concept of like understanding food differently and learning a little bit more about it. And I know folks have mixed feelings. In fact, last week's episode, she talked a little bit about not having those diets, but also I think it's about finding kind of what works for you to understand the food piece of
Exactly.
it.
Totally. And I know the program has evolved so much since we were a part of it.
Sure.
And I think it's only grown in success and kind of has moved away from maybe some of the drawbacks that it initially had.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, I think there's lots of different ways to achieve goals. And if that's what helps, then that's great.
Yeah, I love it. Also, friends, not a sponsored,
I was
ad
about to
for Weight
say, I'm
Watchers. But I wouldn't also be mad about that either. So,
exactly, exactly.
well, now, Lauren, I know that you and I have talked a little bit about evidence-based nutrition, and that's kind of your focus and how you like to approach nutrition. Can you share a little bit more about what that means for my listeners?
For sure. There's so much information out there today. There's diet trends on Instagram or TikTok. There might be influencers or people we follow that have specific nutrition plans or promote or educate on specific things. And different things work for different people. And I'm not trying to knock anyone's particular experience, but when I look for nutrition information, I'm looking for data driven, highly researched nutrition information, or as
Yeah,
we say, evidence based.
yeah,
This just means that there's been lots of research to back up these claims. It's difficult in the world of nutrition because research is ever evolving. I feel
mm,
like there's new information all the time.
yeah,
One example I can think of is like eggs. Eating an egg is like smoking a pack of cigarettes. I remember seeing that advertisement or that campaign somewhere.
yeah,
And now we're saying eggs are a great source of nutrition, of healthy fats. Like, let's incorporate eggs in our diet. So
yeah,
I think that research is ever changing, but we can always lead with basics that we know are true,
hmm,
such as eating protein with every meal, drinking lots of water, aiming for 2 fruits and 3 vegetables a day. Um, Also, when we're seeking these evidence based sources, we can specifically look for certain information online. So I like using like nutrition.gov, which is a USDA website.
yeah,
Anything that comes from like the CDC or the USDA, those to me are credible sources. If you're looking for evidence-based, like disease-specific information, there are wonderful associations that have been around forever, like the American Heart Association,
yeah.
the Diabetes Association. So following in organizations like those and seeking information from those sites. And then also following registered dietitians on social media or going to see a registered dietitian locally.
Hmm.
Um, Dietitians are nutrition experts they went to school for it and studied it and have that credible, piece of knowledge to
Yeah.
go in the field. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. I wrote down nutrition.gov so that I can check that one out a little bit more. And also, I think, Lauren, isn't it true that sometimes your insurance will cover, maybe you don't know this, but like we'll cover, your meetings with a dietitian and right, like I know our
Yeah.
insurance has the employee assistance program and I was able to meet with a dietitian several years ago for several meetings.
Absolutely. And there's also so many online resources now. There's like dietitians who do telehealth that
Awesome.
accept insurance as well. So I feel like it's more accessible than ever.
Yeah.
Um, so there's lots of different ways to kind of get that evidence-based info.
Awesome. I love that because it always felt like to me that that was a perk, right? Like something that I had to have extra money for, but it's good to know that that is something that's a little more accessible than maybe in the past.
Totally. It's sometimes the idea of like eating healthy has all these like barriers in front of them.
Yeah.
We can look at like wellness as this kind of glamorous, like hard to reach thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's now more than ever just becoming more accessible. And there's ways that we can achieve good nutrition without like breaking the bank or having a personal chef or anything like that.
Yeah.
So,
I love that. I love
yeah.
that. Well, as you know, this podcast is all about empowering women and helping them advocate for themselves. Why is this an important topic for women to be discussing?
Nutrition is important for women for so many reasons. Really, I can separate it into two specific categories in my
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
socially, and then, of course, biologically.
Hmm.
So, socially, I feel like women have been bombarded with beauty standards,
Yeah.
usually unattainable ones, in the media and essentially everywhere we go since the time we were probably like 6 years old, right?
Yeah.
It's easy for us to feel pressure to look a certain way and therefore eat a certain way. And that way might not necessarily be fueling our bodies.
Hmm.
Um, and our relationship with food might not have always been a good one.
Mm.
As
Yeah.
women, I also think we are typically juggling lots of different things,
Mm. Yeah.
whether it's our job or our side hustles or our friendships, our social circle, our children, families. We might neglect our own dietary needs because we're putting other people or other things first.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then biologically, we're predisposed to all sorts of things, including bone density loss, hormonal shifts, slower metabolisms, anemia, all the fun things. And
Yeah.
actually, heart disease is the new leading cause of death for
Mm.
women, which I sometimes think we hear like men have more visible symptoms of heart disease, so
Yeah.
it's a little easier to identify, but women are experiencing it as well. So being mindful of some of these predisposed illnesses,
Yeah.
and as women, we also are battling biological changes and shifts all throughout our lives that
Yep.
change our nutritional needs. So when we're like of childbearing age, whether we're trying to get pregnant or not, our need for folate actually increases.
Hmm.
And folate helps to prevent birth defects if we are trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
But long term, folate helps to stabilize mood and increase cognitive function. So, an important thing to consider for
Yeah.
everyone. And then, if we're pregnant or nursing, our nutritional needs change again.
Hmm.
Things like calcium, protein, omega-3, all of those nutrients come to mind as things we kind of shift our focus to during that time.
Hmm.
And then, lastly, during menopause, there are certain foods that we can eat to ease symptoms. And even all throughout our lives, there's foods that we can eat to help kind of minimize PMS as well.
Mm.
So overall, women need to hone in on nutrition to feel our best selves all throughout our lives in each chapter.
Mm.
Really, it's just another form of self care, which I know you've talked about on the podcast before.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, very important for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, yeah, I'm thinking about it with my oldest. We're starting to approach what does it look like as her body is changing, and nutrition is one of the things readily listed in some of the books that we're reading. And then as I think about perimenopause and that stage of my life, like, whew, I got to get some more protein and good food in my in my
Yes.
system. And it's interesting because it's the same, but it's also different in those different stages of our lives. So,
Yeah. And I think as women, we're great at evolving and kind of rolling with the punches. And that's what nutrition is
yeah.
going to look like throughout our lives. It will change based on where we're at. But
Hmm.
if we can just have like a good understanding of basics, like I mentioned before, we should
Hmm.
set ourselves up for success.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, Lauren, you have already shared a ton of really great information. If there was one thing that you wanted my listeners to take away or some sort of a goal that they can take away from this episode, what would that be?
Yeah. I am a big fan of habit stacking. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes, I love habit stacking.
Yes. So when making nutritional changes or when wanting to make nutritional changes, it's easy to want to change everything at once
Hmm.
or maybe take a drastic measure to achieve our goals. I feel like there's so many diets out there that are like, cut out this, 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 and this,
Yeah.
and you'll see results. For listeners of your podcast, I would love for them to walk away trying to build one habit at a time and
Mm,
then habit stacking as they feel comfortable with the habit they just formed
yeah.
or mastered.
Yeah.
For example, let's say you struggle with your protein intake. I know you mentioned increasing protein.
Yeah.
Start with 1 month where you're only increasing your protein. Maybe you keep everything else the same, but you focus in on ensuring that you have at least 20 grams of protein at each meal.
Hmm.
You're focusing on varying your types of protein. Maybe you're trying a new tofu recipe that you've always been interested in, or you're looking at easy ways to boost protein, like by packing snacks with you to work. Like, let's hard boil a dozen eggs at the beginning of the week that we just have on hand to help
Yeah.
boost protein. So you're keeping everything else the same. And once that habit feels easier, almost second nature, then you create a second habit. So we stack on maybe increasing our vegetable intake.
Hmm.
And you spend a month prepping fresh veggies to have on stock in your fridge or trying out a new packaged veggie chip, roasting a vegetable you've always been curious about. So this method sets you up for success and prevents burnout. Um,
Mm,
Always trying to focus on things that we can add rather than take away in our diet.
yeah.
Um, Cutting out like all dessert or all carbs does not work long term.
Yeah.
Maybe if you feel like dessert is an issue, I have a sweet tooth. I would say maybe cutting your goal or having your goal be cutting dessert back to once a day or making a healthy dessert in the evening after dinner. Like maybe you do like a chocolate chip peanut butter yogurt bowl, or
Mm-hmm.
something I've made before is chickpea cookie dough.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe trying something like that rather than cutting out, one whole food group
Yeah.
or all dessert. So I think just taking things like one habit at a time is what I would love for people to take away.
I love that. Yeah, I love that habit stacking piece. I'm a big fan of habits and doing that. And those are some great tips. We have recently discovered protein pudding in our house with like, just a protein shake and some pudding powder and it's really good and it satisfies that sweet tooth and gives us a little bit of extra protein, which is nice.
That sounds so good. I've been on a big kick. I really like dates, so I'll take like a packaged date and split it open, put almond or peanut butter in it, and then top it with chocolate chips and shredded coconut.
Yum.
And I think it tastes kind of like a Mounds bar or like Almond Joy.
Yeah.
Um, but it's delicious and it's just a form of natural sugar instead of reaching for maybe something that has a little bit more added sugar.
Yeah.
But again, all foods can fit. And if you want something that has added sugar in it, that is okay too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, those are some really great tips, and I think that that habit stacking, that trying something for a month is super doable, right? Like it's something that folks can commit to. It's just a month, and you can do anything for a short period of time. So, I love that. And I'm curious, as we're kind of rounding towards the end of the episode, what additional tips do you have for the listeners?
Yeah. I would say planning ahead is like my biggest tip. When we're trying to reach any goal, it does take a planning phase, right?
Yeah.
And if we can plan maybe on a Sunday or on a day where you feel like you have 10 minutes to set aside.
Mhm.
I always recommend like shopping ads, like looking at either digital coupons or whatever you use to shop to see what's on sale for the week, trying to plan out a couple dinners around those sales.
Yeah.
Um, I love cookbooks, so I will always go get some inspiration from cookbooks on a Sunday and kind of
Mhm.
create a grocery list. I try to see where I can use an ingredient multiple times. So my grocery list isn't, you know, a million things and
Yeah.
costing me an arm and a leg. It's maybe I'm using carrots for a chili and I'm also using it for a carrot salad and I'm using it for a carrot cake muffin. So I try to use ingredients all throughout the week, but it really takes planning
Mhm.
to get kind of that consistency and um, it prevents you from reaching for things that maybe you wouldn't want to reach for and just helps achieve your goals there.
Yeah.
And then I also think celebrating small successes is a tip I would love for folks to walk away with.
Yeah.
Not beating ourselves up and realizing that the path to our goal might not be linear.
Mm.
There's lots of things to celebrate in our lives, whether it's like our child's birthday or an anniversary or a friend's, um, dinner party, and all of those things can fit in a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I think it really is important for us to take a step back and say, I drink 100 ounces of water today. That's like a huge pat on the back for me. I typically don't drink that much water, and now I'm going to go enjoy my friend's celebration
Yeah.
and give ourselves that grace to kind of fit wellness and just life into one.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that.
and making sure that all food fits in our lives. There's,
Yeah.
yeah, no reason not to enjoy food.
Yeah. I love that. We've got birthday cupcakes sitting on the counter right now, and I'm like, I'm gonna have one and it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, it's all about too, like making sure that that doesn't unravel the rest of your day. If
Yeah.
you're if you're trying to achieve a goal, one small treat that you allow yourself doesn't ruin your entire day or ruin your entire week. It's about
Hmm.
hopping back on that horse
Yeah.
and eating a protein-filled lunch afterwards or
Yeah.
something.
I love it. I love it. And as you were talking about planning, that can feel very daunting,
Yeah.
like a daunting task. And so, one of the tips that I've started using is using AI to help me plan my meal and being really prescriptive in what I'm asking for from AI. And I am amazed at what it can shoot out in terms of reusing ingredients and high protein, or I'm on the Weight Watchers plan, staying within my points and making some adjustments on my own, but it's a really good tool I found.
It is really cool. I recently typed all of the things in my fridge into AI and said, what can I make with this? And it came
Yes.
out with a list of 4 or 5 different things I could make with what I had on hand. So yeah, I think that that is an awesome resource. And if it is daunting, like turn on some music. I don't know, like have yourself a little moment where you are either using AI or just feeling creative and allow yourself that time to plan.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Well, we have reached the end of our time together, and so I'm curious, what are your final thoughts for my listeners as we wrap this episode up?
Yeah. My final thoughts would be that you deserve to feel good and you are worth it. So,
Mm.
looking at nutrition as self-care is my tips for everyone. When we fuel our bodies properly, we feel our best. So, making that investment in ourselves and making those small, attainable goals that can evolve and grow and change throughout our journey, I think is the best way to set things up. Not trying to fix everything at once, but making small changes and tweaks to make us happier and healthier.
I love that. I love that. And not changing everything at once. That's, I think, a really big takeaway for me as I think about like small baby steps and changing the nutrition one habit at a time.
Really.
Awesome. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me this week. I think that there's tons of things in here that I'm excited to try myself and learn a little bit more about kind of what I like and what my family likes and how we can habit stack our nutrition in my house. So thanks so much for joining me this week.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And listeners, thank you for joining this week as well. I am so glad that you continue to tune in and that you continue to learn alongside all of these great guests who join us. And so this week's affirmations: I'm done apologizing for spending time focused on me. I'm done apologizing for figuring out my own nutrition and what works for me. And this one's for you. Fill in the blank. I'm done apologizing for. Friends, go out there, have an incredible week, do the amazing things I know you're capable of. And remember to like, follow, and share wherever you're listening to this podcast episode. I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and share with friends who you think might need to hear this message or who might enjoy this podcast. And if you're not following me on social media, you are missing out, my friends. Make sure you find me on, let's see, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube. So make sure you hit up any or all of those different platforms to find more information throughout the week, throughout the month, as we talk about these episodes and more issues that are important to women. And if you want to be my guest, just like Lauren, make sure that you fill out the form at the link in my show notes or on any of my social media platforms. I want to hear all the incredible, amazing, wonderful things that you have to share with my listeners and the things that you're incredibly passionate about. And remember, you're fabulous. You're a badass. You've got this, and I'm here for you.